everyone. Welcome back to Screen Review. My name is Megan.
Hey, and I'm Hannah. And if you'd like, really quick, you can go ahead and follow us on our social media pages at Boca Raton or at Boca Tribune. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
Yep. So make sure to do that. Today we're going to be discussing the movie Her. It came out in 2013. It's rated R and it runs about 2 hours and 6 minutes. So
Meg, if you'd like, start us off. You can give us your general thoughts, but no spoilers right now.
All right, go. All right, so spoiler-free general thoughts of this movie. It's a weird one to get through. The overall kind of, I guess, message of it is fun. Not fun necessarily. It's a little bit dark, actually, the ending. It's definitely inappropriate. It's rated R for a reason. Definitely one you're probably going to want to make sure to be careful about if you're watching with anyone that's a little bit sensitive to that kind of thing. Hannah will touch on the cinematography of the movie a little bit later, but I would also just like to kind of point that out really quickly. They did a really nice job with that. I really appreciate if movies are very intentional about the decisions they make in that kind of aspect. This movie definitely did that. I'm a huge dork for soundtracks. I've kind of mentioned that in previous shows. The soundtrack to this one was very nice. I appreciated it. I like the nice kind of pop of music to really drive a good scene home, we'll say. But other than that, I mean, it's fine. Am I happy I watched it? I don't know. It was good. Do I think that this is going to be like such an amazing movie that really resonated with me? No. But interesting message toward the end that I think we can definitely kind of break down a little bit in our next segment of this. So I guess, Hannah, think general thoughts.
Well, I kind of agree this is an inappropriate movie, so watch it with that in mind. It's not too bad. I mean, they don't really do anything super explicit, but it's rated R, so just bear with me. Get ready. Yeah. However, I'm not mad I watched it. Like, not with some of the other shows that we've had a review. This one I'm not mad that we've seen.
Was it the Devil All the Time?
Yeah,
that one I wish I could erase from my mind.
That image of Robert Pattinson is still ingrained in my mind, but we don't have to talk about it because we don't have to. I don't want to relive it. He's gross in that movie. But with this movie, I think all of the characters do a really good job at being in their role. I watched this review of the movie really quick with all of the actors and Spike Lee. I think it's Spike Jonze was his name.
It Spike something. I'll look it up really quickly.
I think Spike Lee does the Marvel stuff. I think Spike Jonze is this guy.
Yeah, it's Spike Jonze.
Yeah. So he had this questionnaire after an audience watched the film, and they asked Spike Jonze what did he want to focus on more in developing the script and being the director, like whether it was the idea of the movie or the actual character development for the characters. And every actor there, including, Spike Jonze also said this, that he wanted to focus more on the development of the characters. And I think that really helped you put yourself into the position of each character. You could relate to each one of them because they spent so much time focusing on their individual stories. So I really appreciated that part of this movie. With a lot of movies, I feel like only follow the one character the most. I mean, although this movie does do that, you still relate to the others.
Yeah, like I would say, for example, we'll talk about this in the spoiler section. So I guess if that's everything, is that everything you have kind of general thoughts, Hannah?
Yeah, but I'll say really quick, because I always like to mention this, when you said this thing about the soundtrack, which is kind of your go-to, mine is color. This one was super intentional with the color they used. The main character wears the most vibrant colors. He wears a lot of red, and the background's always a muted kind of grayscale, kind of beige. There's not really a lot going on. He is the thing that stands out, and they do that. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but they do that intentionally, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess if you have not seen the movie and you would like to watch it, go ahead. You can find it on Netflix. Again, it's about 2 hours long, so it's a long one, but just be mindful of that rated R kind of setting. Watch it if you'd like. Come back, find us. We'll be on IGTV, Facebook, YouTube, really wherever you can find us at Boca Tribune. So I guess now we're going to kind of get into the nitty gritty of it, the spoiler section. So I guess first and foremost, I kind of want to jump off that point that you were saying about how you kind of got a glimpse into every single character and they all had individual character development. And I would definitely agree to that. I mean, I think obviously this movie focused a lot on Theodore, the main character, as well as kind of Samantha. I mean, yeah, it was about Samantha, but mostly, of course, it was about Theodore, Joaquin Phoenix's character. So you definitely follow him throughout the entire movie. But I really liked how, you know, you kind of saw Amy Adams' character, Amy, kind of walking through her life and, you know, kind of being in a loveless marriage, then finally being able to find joy and find herself again. Loved it. Good for her. You know
Exactly.
what I mean?
Like, go off, girl.
Yeah. Even like Chris Pratt's character and like his girlfriend, like they were relatively kind of three-dimensional. They had some important things about them. But I guess even like the smaller characters, like Olivia Wilde's character, like the blind date girl, she kind of had character development in like the 5-minute scene she was in.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And the girl that Samantha wanted Theodore to get with, we'll say, she even had a little bit of kind of a breakdown. Felt bad for her. Like, but she was more than just a face. And I think that I really like that about this movie is that everyone was more than just a face. You know, they all kind of had more to them. They were layered, and I like that.
I agree with what you were saying, and I want to specifically circle back to the scene with like Olivia Wilde and Theodore, we'll say, when she said he is stating, "Oh, I think I'd like to see you again" or something, and then she says, "Oh, you're kind of gross." Like it's something like that sort of exchange. And in that review I watched of like Spike Jonze discussing why they had that conversation, like why it played out that way. And Olivia Wilde was also like pressing, like, how should I be in this scene? Like, how do you want it to be? And they really spent a majority of the time talking about like, what do you actually hear when people talk to you? Like, because the idea of like someone saying, "I want to see you again," like in its face isn't creepy, but like, why did she take it that way? Like, what did she hear when he said that? And like, sometimes what you hear is more important than what the person actually says, which even drives another point home that like this movie really touches on, and loneliness specifically in the time of like heightened technology, like heightened technological capacities. Big sentence.
Okay. No, definitely. I just thought you were going to kind of elaborate on that point further, but no, I totally hear what you're saying. I mean, obviously, this movie came out in 2013, but it definitely is more of a futuristic type movie with all the kind of, like you're saying, logical advancement capabilities or whatever you said, like capacities, unnecessary. But you could see, I mean, Theodore was always relatively like in busy spaces, you know, like the streets were pretty much full of people, public transportation. There was a lot of people everywhere. It was definitely a city setting, but everyone was looking down at their, like, just looking down, honestly, because they didn't even have like iPhone or Android, any kind of screens really they were looking at. They were all listening in on their little headsets, talking to their virtual assistant people. So they didn't even have to take the extra second to look at the screen. Everything was just virtually already accessible to them. So there's no interactions between people at all. It was just you speaking with your little virtual assistant person, soon to be the OS operating systems we'll get to know. And so it was definitely, I mean, even though he was in a crowded space, I mean, a cliche, but like, he probably felt so alone in a crowded room.
And that's what yes, bingo. And that's where the color comes in, because everyone around him is wearing the same color, and he's the one that stands out because he doesn't belong in the setting that he's in. Like, he intentionally does not fit in with everyone around him, and that adds to the isolation he feels. He can't relate to his surroundings because he's not really trying to.
Yeah, definitely. And I would also even say that this isolation can be felt not only in the colors and kind of the outfits of everyone, but even if in that like comically large house apartment thing that he lives in. I mean, it's probably super lonely in there. I mean, the place was absolutely huge and he was just in there all alone playing like a weird
video game.
Yeah, like a weird video. Like what is that? You know what I mean? That's what, you know, I don't know why that was part of it, but sure. So yeah, it was definitely isolating. I mean, as he was reading his email, like his friends were reaching out to him. They wanted to hang out with him. But clearly, I mean, he was going through the messy divorce with Charlotte. Was Charlotte her name?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. He was going through the messy divorce with her. So, I mean, that even kind of isolated him further because I mean, we didn't really get a super, I guess, complete glimpse into the demise of the relationship. We got little hints here and there about what happened, but we don't really know. But I mean, even that in and of itself is extremely isolating, because when you're in a marriage with someone, you kind of share similar groups of friends, like you do similar things together. And now for that all of a sudden to be coming to an end, it can be hard to readjust. But it seemed honestly like he wasn't even trying. And I think that's important.
And that's another, I watched another video that kind of touched on the same point and mentioned it the exact same way that you did, that he
I haven't even watched that video.
it was like about needs versus desires. Like, he wants to be with Charlotte, but he needs to be a better friend. He needs to do the work that he's unwilling to do because he's so dead set on getting instant gratification. And like, that instant gratification would be getting back with Charlotte, would be like beating that video game, versus like actually doing the work to figure out, like, why do you feel lonely? Or like, when you're surrounded by people, like, why aren't you reaching out to your friends when they clearly want to talk to you because they're also going through things? And he was so unwilling to do that because he was so dead set on getting his desires, when really he just needed to fix his needs and prioritize those over what he was wanting for that instant, I feel better now, like the instant serotonin, what that Samantha brought, why he was so drawn to her.
Yeah, and I think that it's also important to note the reason that I think at least he was so drawn to Samantha is because she was almost like this ideal version of a woman in your ear. Like, she'll always say yes to you, you know, she'll apologize, she'll do the right thing. Like, she's there to serve you. She's an operating system. She's there to organize your files and read your emails and get your stupid little letters published. You know what I mean? She works for you. And I think that that is kind of what he was missing in his relationship with Charlotte. And so the fact that he kind of found this in someone, we'll say, he definitely loved that, because it seemed that that was what he was missing from Charlotte. Because based on their kind of like the recounting of their relationship, it seemed that it was expected of her to kind of be that yes woman, but she was just a real person. You know, real people are more complicated than just being, like, she called it like a happy, bouncy LA wife, you know? Yeah. And that's what Samantha could be for Theodore. Just, you know, she has a positive demeanor, because it's like your Siri. Like, your Siri is never going to yell at you. Like, that would be, no one would want to use it then.
Like, when I watched that video with all the people, Spike Jonze said that his intention for Samantha was to be a person that, like, an artificial intelligence that was like a child who never experienced any kind of doubt or confusion or worry, because everything was just the way it is, and this is just life. And so she was supposed to be that like happy-go-lucky, bouncy LA wife, but then she started experiencing those like bouts of jealousy, like she would not respond to him because she was mad, like things like that. She was gaining more and more capacity for human emotion, we'll say, but she was actually able to process it because she was at the higher vibration level.
Yeah, I made that joke. I made a bad joke earlier, everyone.
I thought it was funny. And so she left.
Yeah. Long story short, she left. Exactly. And I think that, I mean, I don't know how I don't want to say that I don't like Samantha, because she's a computer. Like, what it is. Yeah, but I mean, I just don't know if I really liked Theodore or Samantha. I don't know if I liked either of them. I liked pretty much every side character, though. You know, they were all cool. But to me, I found Samantha and Theodore to be problematic, because, like you were saying, I mean, yeah, Samantha would hit these like bouts of jealousy where she would ignore him. Like, she would go through that weird like updating thing without telling him, like do a bunch of weird stuff, like try to spice up their relationship, like do very like human, naive kind of things. But then she was also in love with 641 other people. So it's just like, where's the consistency in that?
Talk about a plot twist. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah. Yeah, that was hard. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I can see how that can be absolutely crushing to Theodore. But at the end of the day, I mean, she is an OS. She is, we'll call her like a conscious computer. So she's capable of handling all those relationships with all those people and still finding Theodore special and still finding their talks beneficial. And that's why in the end, she eventually had to leave, because all the OSs kind of resonated the same way with her, to where they were capable of so much more than humanity. And that, I think, definitely led to them all leaving very abruptly.
Yeah, they just packed it up. They said,
That was it.
bye, boys.
I would like to spend a second kind of unpacking. I think it was one of the final scenes. I think it kind of went a little bit over my head. So I would like you to maybe take a stab at it. So, the final scene when Samantha and Theodore were kind of saying goodbye. Did I freeze?
You froze, but let's take a quick break. So when we come back,
yes,
we'll discuss. Yes.
Okay. See you guys soon. Welcome back.
Hey,
before we get back into it, follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. You'll find us pretty much everywhere at Boca Tribune. So, jumping straight back into it, one of the going straight in. One of the final scenes I would kind of like for you to maybe unpack a little for us if you understood, if you got it. I mean, I don't know. Would just be that weird scene with like Theodore in the snow, kind of like hugging that person. What was that? What was going on there?
I honestly don't know.
Okay, let me explain a little bit of what was happening around it, just as kind of a refresher. So it was when I almost said Scarlett, Samantha, not the actress's name. So when Samantha was kind of saying like, "Oh, the other OSs and I are leaving," like this is it, like this will be our final talk. Like imagine I'm like laying down next to you, and he was like laying on his little pillow, like crying, sad. But then he kind of a weird next scene. I think it was when she was explaining the circumstances around her leaving. He was like imagining himself like standing in the snow, kind of like hugging almost like a faceless person. So do we, I guess I'll pose sort of a question, kind of two routes that I think maybe it could have been taken in, I guess. Was it him, saying goodbye to Samantha, the version, whatever, the vision that he had of her, or was it him deciding to kind of make amends and try to patch up his relationship with Charlotte? Because it was a faceless person, I believe. I don't think I really saw anyone specifically.
So I think it was probably more of the first one than the second one, only because it was snowing.
Okay.
And the snow to me represents the cold feeling he felt in his heart when Samantha was describing like the circumstances of her leaving. And so it's like their final goodbye where he's gonna hug this like faceless creature because she was never given a face. And they even talked about this in the Spike Jonze thing I watched, where like, why didn't you give her like an avatar or something? Like, why did you leave her just as a voice? And Olivia Wilde was one that answered this. And it's because she's supposed to be like the perfect image in your head, not the one that Spike Jonze creates. Like she's supposed to be your perfect assistant, like the viewer's assistant, so that they would feel attached to her in the same kind of way that Theodore does. And so him no longer having that like faceless creature he can just use, I'll say, like she's just there to serve him, like just how you were saying, that it's that cold goodbye that he needs to have, so he visualized it.
definitely. So then I guess more so of our final points. I mean, do you have a direction you want to take it in before we start kind of breaking down the ending?
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll mention a couple brief things that I was watching before this show. That every couple shot in this movie, so there's a couple and there's Theodore in the frame. They show the couples side by side, and then they mirror that with Theodore alone in a corner by himself to further prove that point of that, like, he doesn't really get relationships that well, like platonic and not like and romantic, I guess. Like he's just so obsessed with trying to get his life, his individual life, to a better place that he's neglecting the relationships all around him. So we'll never really get there because you can't live without other people. And so he's realizing that and struggling to get around to other people because he's seeking the instant gratification that like a video game would get versus doing the work and like sitting down with your friend who's talking about her failed marriage and you can't get past your own marriage, you know? So that was one thing with a couple shots. I already talked about the color. And then one more thing to further, just he is feeling alone. Every shot that was him with the city behind him, the city was out of focus. And the only time the city was in focus was when him and Samantha were getting along well. And then he would change his outfit. So he was no longer wearing those bright red colors. He was wearing the more beigey, brown, muted gray colors because he was finally fitting in with his surroundings by being like that person who is obsessed with their technology. So he was furthering his spiral because he still wasn't happy when he was fitting in. Because he didn't really need another person. He needs to find satisfaction with himself first.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that kind of the points you were bringing up really tied in with the ending because I think that it took Samantha leaving to really, I guess, convince him, we'll say, that human relationships are the most important. Like, it's just not all about your technology all the time. Like, you need to sit down and listen to your friend about her failed marriage. Like, even when Amy was showing, you know, her then husband and Joaquin Phoenix's character, the documentary footage that she had, he wasn't really even paying attention. Like, he was like, oh, I'm going on a date soon. Like, I'm going on a date soon. Like, it was all about him initially. You know, he was so focused kind of on himself versus kind of being present in the moment and working on those human relationships and building those relationships. But then Samantha called and he's like, I gotta go, guys. Like, sorry, my technology rang.
Exactly.
I can't put it down for 1 second just to be with you. But regardless, I mean, in the end though, I mean, he mended whatever relationships he needed to mend. He sent that nice letter to Charlotte. I believe that they will be friends. Not that it really matters, but the fact that he even is the one now to put out the effort to try to, you know, repair their friendship. But it wasn't like he's like, oh, ready to get back together. I love you so much. Like, he's ready to work on their friendship, which I think is really important. And also work on his friendship with Amy.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, he finally sees the people in his life as people versus just like as another being in the society that they both exist in. And it was supposed to be like an enhanced LA was what this was in the like director's mind.
Okay.
Was Spike Jonze.
Yeah, I think that is actually really, really interesting because LA itself can be very isolating.
Yeah, and I
think that's why.
He was like, his idea was like, in this society where you have so many resources like through your technology and yet you still feel isolated. Like, that's what he wanted to make this movie feel like. Yeah,
I mean, I think he definitely succeeded in doing that. I believe we hit on every point that I really wanted to discuss. What do you think, Hannah?
I think I'm good. I really this movie and then another movie that I've watched that relates technology and a relationship and freedom was Ex Machina. That was really amazing. I recommend that. If you haven't seen, I think it came out probably
a long time ago.
Yeah, probably honestly like later though than this movie. Like, more recent is what I'm saying.
I don't think so. You've been talking about that movie for years. 2015, actually. That's very interesting.
Right. It's a kind of the similar point that like this touches on, but it's slightly different. So I recommend both of the films. Watch them side by side so you can do a direct comparison. That's my recommendation.
Just have two screens going at the same time. Just watch them both.
See if you can keep up. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next movie we're watching.
yeah, I'll go ahead and intro that now. So yeah, it's pretty much everything we have for her. Overall, good. You know, it was fine. It was a good movie. Interesting commentary. You know, why watch the boring 2-hour movie when you can just watch our fun 30-minute show? You know,
We did the work for you. You're welcome.
Yeah, so sorry. Regardless, join us next week, Tuesday, 7 p.m. We're going to be watching Being John Malkovich on Netflix because we're now huge Charlie Kaufman fans. It just happens.
Spike Jonze, I love him.
And Spike Jonze, he's back as our director. So we're about to have a really nice show next week. So make sure you don't miss it. And we'll see you then. Bye. Bye.
Information. If it exists in writing, we print it. If it exists online, we update it. If it exists on mobile, we notify. If it exists in video, we show it. If it exists in audio, we play it. In the past, the news had to wait for a paper to print for it to happen. Today, news happens in real time. It's analyzed, edited, and published immediately by us, your neighbors, and of course, you. Wherever you are, you write, edit, give opinions, share photos, and make the news happen. This is why paper needs to be on print, on screen, and on your phone. Wherever you are, your news has its pulse in the community. The Boca Raton Tribune. We are much more than just a newspaper. We are your closest neighbor.